Hello, I'm Frank Green, and this is the Author's Outlet. I usually do this show behind the camera at a book signing, but today's show is completely different. Today I'm doing an interview with local author and free speech advocate G. Todd Slone. Welcome to the show, Todd.
Thank you for inviting me, Frank.
Well, now the disclaimer. The views expressed on this show are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of CCTV or anyone associated with CCTV. So now that that's out of the way, let's get to the introduction.
Sounds good.
Okay, he is a writer, editor, poet, cartoonist, and educator with a PhD from a French university.
Yes.
Très bien.
Merci bien.
Oui. He is fluent in French, Spanish, and he's studying Italian. You know, I always heard that Italian and Spanish are very similar.
Very similar, and also French. It's all in Italian.
Oh, yeah,
a little French, a little Spanish.
I thought French was quite a bit different from
No,
the two.
actually, you know, thanks to my French, Italian is coming quite easily for me.
Oh, that's true.
Because I can recognize a lot of words that aren't too different
All right,
in Italian and French.
So you're just picking that up for the heck of it, or
well,
just
because I traveled there this summer, 3 weeks in Italy. I love Italy, and I want to be able to communicate better, read the papers, etc. So
it's always better than asking if anyone speaks English, I suppose.
Yes, it is, definitely.
Todd has taught English, French, and Spanish for over 20 years, mostly at universities and colleges in France, America, though he's also taught at several high schools in the United States, and even aboard a U.S. Navy destroyer. Now that's got to be a story there.
Exactly. Well,
you don't look like a destroyer kind of guy.
Well, you know, when I was on that ship, I had a shaved head. It was a free haircut. On the destroyer, they shave your head for nothing, and I did that. It was 2 months, mostly at sea, and I actually wrote a book on the experience, because it was quite an experience to be in a small cabin with another teacher, 24 hours around the clock, and only to be in the ship. I would spend a whole week without even seeing the sun, without seeing outside, just in the hull.
All right. Well, were you seasick quite often?
That did occur. That did occur.
So now, why would they need a teacher of, well, a teacher of language, I guess. I'm answering my own question.
Well, actually, English. I was teaching English aboard. I teach English and French and Spanish, and they had English teachers, and also Spanish they do on the ship. But they offer an education to sailors and officers too, and it's a free education. Yeah. So it's another thing to entice people to join up.
Oh, that's... Well, you learn something every day on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, but those were the glory days.
Yes.
And they're long gone, because Todd claims to be a blacklisted college professor. Currently, he is reduced to teaching a single online course in business English, because that is all a vocal dissident and ardent supporter of free speech and expression, the cornerstone of our democracy.
Of democracy, yeah. I would say...
democracy in general, yeah.
Pardon?
Of democracy in general, right.
Yeah, of democracy in general, exactly. Yeah, the First Amendment, though the First Amendment really pertains only to government and public organizations, just the same, free speech and free expression, I think, are the cornerstone of democracy in general. They're necessary.
Yeah, that's about all you have, right? If you
citizens must express their opinions. They should be encouraged to do so.
Yeah, how do you feel that economic freedom comes in there too? Is it because I heard if you don't have economic freedom, you don't have any freedom, because if they can take your job away, then...
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, that's...
I don't deny it. I think that's a good point. If you're hungry, that's certainly more important than speaking your opinion.
If you're hungry, you're going to shut up. We'll put it that way.
That's right.
All right, let's see. One last quote here I'll make. Essentially, all of my writing and cartooning stems from my whistleblowing activities and involves intellectual corruption in what I term academic/literary industrial complex. That would be from university and literary establishments.
That's right.
Right.
For me, that's important. I call it the academic literary industrial complex, echoed off of the military industrial complex that Eisenhower
yes.
Gave us. And to me, it's the establishment, the academic, the educationist, and literary establishment. Although there's not one establishment, I think it's all interlocked in a sense. And to me, that is the core intellect of the nation, of the democracy, academe and literature.
Right.
And so I think it's an important subject to criticize, etc., to look at, to examine.
All right. So kind of turning to your writing career here, I think this is a document that Todd sent along to me, so I was able to at least rearrange it for my own use. But you have these writing themes that in all of your writing you evidently hit on these little themes, and we'll kind of go through them one by one and see if we can make some good discussion.
Right.
Okay, reluctance, if not outright refusal to debate. Now, where does that, it comes in the college area? Or
That's right, in the college area and in the literary area too, since I am an editor and publisher myself. I'm obviously interested in that, but I do find there is tremendous reluctance on the part of college professors, certainly college administrators, editors, publishers, poets, writers, artists, you name it, to debate and to accept criticism. There is a general reluctance to accept criticism, especially outside criticism. They don't know what to do with it in general. Of course, this is a generality that I'm talking about here. So I might, for example, criticize an administrator at a college, and generally the response is silence. In other words, the administrator doesn't respond, behaves as if there was no criticism to begin with. That's how it works. Silence, if there is a reaction, it's usually a denigrating epithet. Someone will call you something. But rare is it that I receive a logical refutation of what it is that I criticized.
Yeah, well, what type of criticisms would you lob at or I don't know, put up at a particular situation?
For colleges, for example.
Yeah.
I think there's a tremendous uniformity in colleges throughout the nation, and I think that's shameful. I think there's little creativity. When it's decided, let's all focus on assessment, for example, every college in the nation focuses on assessment. What is assessment? It's a new word for grading, for example, and I find it ridiculous. In other words, I also find that the educationist regime, if you will, who seem to be controlling all of these trends, they come up with new words for old topics. Grading, for example, they call it assessment. What else is in the wind now? Portfolio building. Every college now must have portfolio building. It's very bizarre to me.
And what does that mean? What's the
well, students are encouraged to put together a portfolio of things they're doing, for example, in college, and I think they might do that in high schools too, I think, too.
You know, as a matter of fact, I just saw that today where in an art class.
There you go. Every high school in the nation now must be involved in portfolio building. Yeah. And to me, this is all simply diverting attention from the reality that things aren't going that well in high school and in colleges across the nation. Students aren't learning. We have college graduates who have a problem reading.
Oh my God.
We have special reading there. In fact, I see ads all the time for reading instructors of reading at colleges. To me, that's insane.
You know, that portfolio, now you think they're moving to that portfolio building thing because it's easy for the students to put together a portfolio or fun or whatever, what's the...
Well, I'm not sure if I really know
why they do it.
purpose of it. I think it's so the student can have right in his hands, this is what I learned at college this year and next year, and they can have it right here. So in other words, they can at least say, I must have learned something.
Right.
It's here. So.
Yes, right. If there's nothing actually there, they have some symbols of it. Or
And there's another thing I have a problem with in colleges is the tremendous amount of backslapping and self-congratulating that goes on the stage whenever there's a faculty meeting. Everyone's saying what a great job we're doing, and yet we read in the newspapers all the time, graduates can't read. We've got to get people from foreign countries because our college graduates don't seem to be able to do what they have to do when they get out in the real world and have to do a job,
right,
etc.
That's an unfortunate problem with this country. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, rejection of free expression. If that expression differs from the Educationist party line. What is the Educationist party line, for instance?
The Educationist party line. Well, I'm sure it's a, you know, there's a lot involved in it, the Educationist party line. I just use that as a general term. Well, part of the Educationist party line is this portfolio building, assessment, workshops, all of these things, and you shouldn't criticize them. I know I criticized the assessment workshop that I was forced to attend as part of Bennett College, where I was teaching Spanish and French, and I criticized it. I thought it was ridiculous to attend this 4-hour seminar on how to grade, which is really what it was.
So your free expression was to criticize the process, and
yeah,
that's
and I
what
think,
they don't like. Yeah, that's,
I think that should have been encouraged, and yet it's anything but encouraged from what I see at the different places I've taught at. It's in fact quite frowned upon to criticize anything. That's part of the party line, that assessment thing. Yeah, and the other part of the party line is we are doing a great job. That's the party line, the Educationist party line. You can see it here in Massachusetts.
Well, I know in any group they seem to, you know, in that they don't think they can progress unless everybody's happy about what's going on and how they're doing. They have to constantly be talking positive.
Yes.
You know, I know in some other areas of life, they emphasize the negative, so that so for instance, like the Patriots, right, who were doing well. The coach is always saying, pointing to all the things they did badly, even if they won the game, rather. So they're very successful. So maybe that's a model for success.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't see that much in academia, where the coaches are saying what everyone's doing bad.
Yeah.
You hear the coaches say we're doing a wonderful job.
Right.
Period. And if you don't like it, maybe you shouldn't be at this particular institution, which I think is horrendous. You know, I think they would want someone who doesn't like it to balance the positive, this excess positivism that I see in higher education and elsewhere.
Right.
We need a balance. We need some people to criticize too.
Right.
You can't improve without criticism, as far as I'm concerned.
Because the real world is hard. So that if you're floating on a positive cloud forever, then someday you got to get off, right?
That's right.
All right. Speaking of reading, I was working on this word earlier. Diminution. Did I get that correct that time? Diminution.
You got that one.
The lessening, we'll call it,
Okay.
of logical argument, and replacing it with politically correct fixed responses. That's something you cover in your...
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I do mention that, true. I just find that people don't want to debate in general. I shouldn't say people, but the people I come into contact with, academics, for example, poets, who else? Editors, writers. If you criticize, they don't want to debate, they don't want to respond and say, well, you're not really right what you say here, and follow through logically why I'm not right, with facts to back up why I'm not right.
Right.
There is very little of that. As I say, it's either silence, they don't want to hear the criticism, or they'll call you a name, or they'll bring out something that is, politically correct in a sense. I know that word's been overused recently.
Yeah, politically correct, yes. When was that invented? I'd say with Hillary Clinton and the...
maybe, I think probably even before, maybe.
I don't think I heard that before, but I know it came in the early 90s.
One of the big things is diversity, of course. And here I found myself teaching at an all-black female college, and every time there was a faculty meeting, which was about once a week, quite often,
meetings, yes,
the president would talk about diversity and how important diversity was. And here there were only black female students attending this college.
All right, now how did you happen to get to be teaching at a black women's college?
Well, that goes back to, that was, you don't find many, let's say, how would I say it now? let's just say that's a bottom rung institution where I was, okay? Because it was black. I don't know if it was because it was black. It was a somewhat poor college. I call it a bottom rung institution because you're not going to find people from Harvard begging, people with Harvard degrees begging to teach at Bennett College, for example. That just doesn't happen.
Right. All right. So, so you'd left other positions and
also
wound
the
up
pay is much lower.
Yeah.
Okay. The salary is much lower. So yeah.
Right. You're right. So
yeah. In fact, it was all I could get. Okay, that's where I was there. So and in
was,
fact, 2 years, I had found 2 years was sufficient for me. It was an all-black female college, and it was a religious college, and I am not at all religious, and I don't think religion and higher education mix at all. I think it's a terrible combination, especially when we're looking for logical argumentation and logical thought, and we have the president coming up there giving her hallelujah speech week after week, etc.
Right. So now you always been a resident. Sort of, is Concord your home, or
I've been around, but I've been here for who knows how long now? 7 years, maybe.
7 years.
Yeah, something like that.
I think that's about the same amount of time that I've been here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. So we were getting onto that here with this idea where positivism, esteem building, backslapping. I think we already covered that one.
Yes.
You say that's kind of the way things are done today, with too much of that, not enough of the critical thought.
Yeah, and we see that, of course, in corporate America, in the nation's corporations, and I think that's where it's coming from. Again, these aren't only my ideas. There are many others, I believe, who share a lot of things I'm saying here. Yeah. But clearly, corporate America is now seemingly in control, sort of academe also. You see the same people. You see college presidents making, well over $100,000 a year, like CEOs.
Yeah, I don't know if I get too excited about someone making $100,000 a year now, but
yeah, well, true. You have, for example, Johns Hopkins University. The president there, it was just in the news, is making over $1 million a year, and that's a big salary, I think.
Yes,
and I think that's part of the corporation. I think academia is looking at big business and trying to imitate big business in many respects.
And that would be overpaying executives?
Paying executives, precisely. And also not being accountable. Like we have seen with Exxon, etc.
I know we have college presidents with golden parachutes and that kind of thing.
Exactly. We know William Bulger. How can I not mention him?
I know. Right. Oh, yes. You were once an employee of that.
That's right. That's right.
All right. How about the old favorites, nepotism and cronyism?
Well, that's what I saw at where I was at Fitchburg State when I was there. We had for example, the chief of continuing ed, who was a dean of continuing ed. Her husband was a judge, a local judge. He was teaching a course, a night course, under her. She had power over him. To me, that's kind of a little, she's going to evaluate me, and she's going to also evaluate her husband.
Oh, that's
bad, extreme, but yet it existed, and perhaps it still does. But there are other examples at Fitchburg State, for example, and nobody seems to care. I think it's part of, especially in this state of Massachusetts, it seems to be quite strong in this state. Nepotism, cronyism.
Well, if you ever listened to Howie Carr,
I have read his column.
Read his column. Well, I guess he makes a living out of showing nepotism and cronyism.
Good for Howard Carr, I say.
It's amazing how he's able to get those connections. Someone who spends a lot of time and
and I don't think there should be this tremendous political connection we have. When you get a college president in one of our state colleges, the president normally has tremendous political ties and connections with Boston, with the state senators, etc. You had William Bulger, who went from the state senate to the University of Massachusetts. I don't think that's good.
No.
It might be good for fundraising, and also I think that's a big problem. Now, the college president, his main or her main concern is fundraising. There's a constant push for fundraising, not educating. That's not the concern. It's we need more money. Where are we going to get more money?
Well, yeah. So that's why they get the big bucks then for their ability to bring in money.
Political connections, etc. Yeah.
All right, let's see now. Now, worship of celebrity is another theme in your writing, right? That you.
Well, I see that as a problem in our democracy in general. I think it's a diversionary activity where we see young people, especially, idolizing anyone who's well known and anyone who has a lot of money. I think money is being worshipped today. I come from the 60s generation, and we were the opposite in that sense. We did not worship people who had huge mansions. And today, I think I see a lot of young people are worshiping people who have huge mansions. They want to have a huge mansion too. Personally, I don't need a mansion. All I need is a little box cabin and a lot of land to keep the neighbors away.
Well, I think the Rose shack up there in Walden Pond is not livable at this point.
I wish they would let me have it.
Yes, I'd like to go there and build a condominium or something.
But the same goes in literature. We were talking about literature. I see people worshiping someone who got a famous prize. The Concord Poetry Center, for example, who do they invite? They invite the prize winner, France, I can't even remember his name, France Wright there. Yes, que pasa?
Okay, right, all right. So let's see. Now let's get into some real things here.
Okay.
Your literary journal, the American Dissident. So
yes.
Some artwork from it here.
Well, yeah, I did. I've done a couple of covers. I don't do all the covers. Here are a couple of covers I did.
Yeah.
I am not a trained artist at all.
I couldn't have thought that.
But I have worked hard at it on my own.
Right.
I came up with it. But these are the covers I did out of watercolors, and here are some of the issues.
Right. Yeah.
We've got 10 issues out now, and in fact, I just went down to the post office before coming here to get issue number 11 out. And we have the Concord Public Library, very nice. They're subscribing to it since the beginning. I also have several universities subscribing, and just a month ago, to my great surprise, Harvard University's Widener Library asked to have the back issues and also to subscribe.
You must be in heaven now, huh?
Well, it was a good boost.
And so what is it? What do we see in there?
Okay, well, you might see when you look at it, oh, this is radical, communist, or whatever.
Oh, communist?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. In mythological America, I call it, American dissident is an oxymoron. In other words, the two don't go together. Whenever we see dissident in the newspaper, Chinese, Russian, Soviet, Czech, etc., those are the dissidents. But here in America, never heard of such a thing.
No.
It's basically a literary journal that publishes poetry, essays, and political cartoons, if you will, and also letters, lots of letters to the editor in it, and everything in it must say something, and often something critical, not off-the-cuff critical, but something backed by statement, by facts and observations.
Right. Sort of a scientific dissident.
Well, it's not, it's not really scientific. I mean, poetry, it's hard to say is scientific. But I find most poetry journals, for example, do not have a focus. This has a focus. Poetry itself ought not be a focus. From my point of view, poetry ought to be, if you will, a weapon or an arm to combat injustice.
Yeah.
And in many countries it has been. It has had a tradition like that.
Song, right? Poetry, song, music, set to music, ballads, that kind of thing is usually a political.
Yeah, there have been political songs, etc. Definitely, yes.
All right, so that's your.
And I do have people from all over the country who subscribe and who receive this and who send me submissions. People from Montreal even, and I always look for Mexican and Quebec submissions because I want to balance it out, have a little Spanish in it, a little French too, as North America, Mexico, USA, and Quebec, Canada. Yeah.
And you did a book,
yes,
within the last few years, right?
Yes.
And this is Total Chaos Behind the Scenes of a National Blue Ribbon High School.
Exactly.
Which evidently documents your time
at Martha's Vineyard Regional High School on the island.
Now, one would think that'd be a choice gig.
It was wonderful. Actually, it was wonderful from a poet's point of view. I loved it because I began mid-year in the winter, all right? And, but the actual gig itself was a nightmarish experience.
Oh.
To be teaching high school. I was teaching mostly third track students. There they had 3 tracks. Third track students are essentially students who are doped up on Ritalin, drugs like that, etc. This is true, I'm not making this up, and who can really not sit in seats. Very, very strange for me coming from a college. I was coming from a college and then suddenly dropped off here on the vineyard at this high school.
Well, that's true. I think you might call those emotionally disturbed children. Is that what you? I think that's the. If you were talking about terms that they use.
Politically correct terms.
Politically correct terms. Emotionally disturbed children.
Some of them were doped up on marijuana and other drugs, and I think we call that dope.
Oh, okay.
And I'm serious. So there was a drug problem, and Ritalin is also a drug problem today. I mean, in the news we see people are selling Ritalin. People are getting prescriptions and selling Ritalin in college. Now college students are using Ritalin.
They smoke it, don't they? They actually smoke it like some kind of...
I wasn't aware of that. Yeah.
Crack. It's sort of a pre...
But you did ask me if this was self-published. It is not self-published. I actually somehow, after sending out the manuscript to probably 100 different publishers, found someone to publish it. People's Press. We hardly sold any copies. But it was not self-published. I just finished a new novel, which I call The Poet, 743 pages long. I spent last winter in Saco, Maine, in a cheap hotel room, and that's where I wrote it out. Impossible to find anyone interested in publishing.
Okay.
And it's highly critical.
Yeah, I see. My father's quite the author, too, that's never been published.
Yeah.
So it's quite a...
Yeah, okay.
Well, there's a couple of little bullet items that I got from your note to me earlier, and so we'll kind of go over them and see what your comments on each are. For instance, the beloved Concord Cultural Council.
Oh yes, yes, of course. Yeah, that's right. I am an activist, often a solo activist, a free speech advocate, as we mentioned before, and I do this in Concord. The Concord Cultural Council, for example, I did do research on the council, and I noticed that they only seem to be giving monies to projects that are, as I term, happy face. In other words, projects that do not criticize whatsoever. As far as they're concerned, from what I can see, anything critical does not constitute culture. And yet, from my point of view, most highly critical things really constitute the core of culture that we remember. I mean, how can we not think of Picasso's Guernica painting, for example? So again, I've simply been trying to obtain a little cash from the Concord Cultural Council, and they refuse absolutely. I can't even get a $15 subscription from them. That's all you wanted to hear on that.
Okay, right. So they're right.
They should be more open.
Right, they should be more open to different viewpoints.
Yes, and especially here I am, a local Concord editor, publisher, and it's as if that's not cultural, which I don't think is right. After all, this is the home of who? Of Thoreau, Emerson, the Walcotts, all writers. This is a core center of American literature.
Sure.
Yeah.
How about the Concord Poetry Center?
Well, the Concord Poetry Center opened recently, and I staged a solo protest in front of the opening in October. I was utterly astonished when its director told me that if I protested in front of their center, I would not be permitted to teach protest poetry at the center.
Right.
To me, that's almost absurd. That's a good example of the lack of logic with a lot of our intellectuals.
Or ironic situation, huh?
Yeah, I mean, one ought to be protesting if they're teaching protest poetry, I would think.
Excuse me, I dropped my mic.
There's just a total refusal of poets at that center to even debate with me. No one was interested at all why I was protesting. Total silence.
I think you said some good things about the Concord Public Library.
Hey, well, if you want a little positive note, yeah. I mean,
Okay, I'm looking for positive here.
Well, I did mention they do
Most people who see
subscribe.
me say, Frank, positive guy, so let's get some positive.
Well, most people who see me see Todd, Mr. Negative.
Yeah, Mr.
So, but I think criticism is certainly a cornerstone in democracy, period. That's why I do as I do. But one problem, however, with the Concord Public Library, they refuse to permit me to post a flyer on their bulletin board. Lincoln Public Library doesn't refuse.
Yeah.
Why does Concord?
How about the Journal, a beloved journal?
Well, the Concord Journal has published a few things that I have submitted, but they don't seem to want to publish much criticism. For example, my criticism of the Concord Cultural Council and the Concord Poetry Center. Total silence. That's not permitted.
Thoreau Society?
Thoreau Society and Thoreau Institute here, as mentioned, I mean, well, we didn't mention it, but I was arrested for arguing nonviolently with a park attendant. No one else was around. He called the police, sent the police after me. The police put handcuffs on me, towed my car, and put me in jail for 4 hours in Concord here. What did I do?
Oh.
Well, the judge obviously dropped the case, threw it out. Obviously, I didn't do anything. But why should I be put in jail for 4 hours, spend the other 4 hours in another jail waiting for the judge to see me, and have my tow card for $98 for speaking, for free speech?
Well, now, were you sticking up posters on those trees in there?
Well, that was another.
That's a different issue?
3 or 4 issues at Walden Pond. One policeman pushed me out with his horse. Mounted policeman physically pushed me out.
They brought the cavalry in to get rid of you,
Yeah,
right?
but I was leaving. But the horse kept nudging me, and you know when they're that close, they're huge, these animals.
Yeah.
But I had asked, I
Right.
simply asked the park attendant, why did he dislike free speech and expression? He called the guy again. The guy pushed me out. On a third occasion, I was standing almost on the street in front of the entrance of Walden Pond with a sign, "No free speech at Walden Pond." My mouth completely shut at all times.
And
State police arrived. Local police arrived. 3 or 4 cop cars here. And they said I had to leave.
for an old guy with a sign?
Like this.
Can't believe
Silent, not blocking anyone. It's astonishing, but this is in Concord, Massachusetts. Thoreau Society doesn't care. Thoreau Institute doesn't care. Emerson Umbrella for the Arts doesn't care. This is what irks me.
All right, the last little topic here we can get into is the town bulletin board. I know
Yes.
there was a controversy with you and that a few years ago.
Actually, it was this year.
This year. Well, I guess I don't know then.
No,
really.
I simply did not like the idea that they were getting rid of the town bulletin board. I thought that was a wonderful area where people could express their opinions. And the Chamber of Commerce decided it was an eyesore, it was unorderly. They got rid of it, replaced it with a lock and key board where now you must get official permission from Town Hall to have something posted there. And actually the Boston Globe covered the story, had a picture of me in it, but the Concord Journal refused to cover the story.
You know, I saw that in your website, which I
Yes.
guess we should mention.
Yes.
I saw that particular article in the Globe.
Yes.
And what is that website that you kind of use for your American
Yeah,
Dissident,
that's right. It's a website that I have
Based
a lot of details on this. I have plenty of documents on it.
And that will be in the credits as we leave. We'll get to see the.
Yeah, you will list the credits, and I welcome anyone to visit the site. And please tell me, if you do, what precisely is a lie or incorrect on that site. I would love for someone to respond.
Okay, my name is Frank Green, and what's your name?
I am Todd Slone. Now, I'm also a cartoonist, as you said, so I do have a
cartoonist.
sense of humor. I don't want you to think I'm all negative in
Yes,
that
I
sense.
did see some of your cartoons on the website, and they do bring a smile to my.
There you go.
And this is the end of this is the end of the.
Frank, you yawned.
I yawn. I don't know.
They're going to have to delete
I'm going to have to
that.
edit that one. Goodbye from the Author's Outlet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank.